She was struggling. You're overreacting. Tyler's voice drifted from the hallway, casual and unbothered, as if he hadn't just walked through the door at 7 in the morning on the day after her birthday. His keys clinked against the entryway table. All the normal sounds of a husband coming home, except nothing about this was normal. Juliana sat at the kitchen table, her coffee long gone cold. She hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire night watching the minutes tick past midnight while her husband was at his ex-girlfriend's place. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked tired but not guilty. That was what struck her first. No shame in his eyes, no hurried explanation. Megan called me around 8. She was having a panic attack. What was I supposed to do? Ignore her? Juliana didn't answer. Babe, come on. His tone shifted into something meant to sound reassuring. She's been going through a hard time since her dad got sick. She just needed someone to talk to. Juliana was 29 years old, and in 3 years of marriage, she'd learned to recognize the difference between an explanation and a performance. This was a performance. You didn't answer your phone, she said quietly. I called you 6 times. It was on silent. I didn't see them until this morning. He shrugged, like missing her birthday was an inconvenience, not a devastation. Something shifted inside Juliana. Not a sudden snap, but a slow settling. She thought about all the times she'd made excuses for him, all the times she'd swallowed her hurt because keeping the peace felt easier than confronting the truth. She looked down at her left hand. The wedding ring sat there, a delicate gold band she'd loved so much when he first slipped it on her finger. Without saying a word, Juliana pulled the ring off and set it on the table with a soft click. Tyler's voice trailed off when he noticed. She saw his expression shift from annoyance to confusion to something that might have been genuine concern. What are you doing? Juliana stood up. Her legs felt steady despite her pounding heart. She walked toward the hallway, passing close enough to smell someone else's perfume on his shirt. She walked past him without a word. Juliana, what is this? The silence she gave him was the first real word she'd spoken all morning. Juliana hadn't always been this quiet. Before Tyler, she'd been loud and opinionated and unapologetically herself. Her friends used to joke that you could hear her laugh from across the room at any party. Somewhere along the way, that fire had dimmed. Now, packing her suitcase while Tyler paced behind her demanding explanations, she tried to remember when she'd started shrinking herself to fit his expectations. Maybe it started 6 months into their relationship when Tyler first mentioned Megan. They'd been together 4 years, he explained, high school sweethearts. The kind of connection that never really goes away. Juliana had smiled and nodded, telling herself mature adults could be friends with their exes. But looking back, she could see warning signs she'd ignored. Tyler's phone buzzing late at night with texts he'd angle away from her. The occasional mention of grabbing coffee with Megan slipped so casually into conversation that she felt crazy for questioning it. She remembered finding Megan's earring in his car once. Tyler had laughed, said it must have been there since before they started dating. She'd believed him because the alternative was too painful. She remembered their engagement day. Tyler proposed in front of his family at a backyard barbecue, and everyone cheered. But later, scrolling through social media, she'd found a comment from Megan underneath the photos. Beautiful ring. He has good taste. Just 4 words. Nothing overtly inappropriate. But something about them had lodged in her chest like a splinter. Why is your ex commenting on our engagement photos? Tyler had barely looked up. We're still friends. What's the big deal? She'd let it go. She'd let so many things go. Her mom had noticed, of course. Mothers always did. Whenever Juliana visited home, her mom would study her face with that worried look. You seem tired, honey. Everything okay with Tyler? Juliana would smile and lie and say everything was fine because admitting the truth felt like admitting failure. She'd chosen Tyler. To admit she'd been wrong would mean admitting she'd wasted years on a man who was never fully hers. The suitcase was halfway full now. Tyler followed her to the bathroom, still demanding answers. "At least talk to me. That's not how marriage works." Juliana paused at the door and finally looked at him. "You spent my birthday with your ex-girlfriend. That's not how marriage works either." Before she left, Juliana did something that changed everything. She went to Tyler's desk, where his laptop sat open. She'd never snooped through his things before. Trust was the foundation of marriage, she'd told herself. What a convenient belief that had been. Her hands moved almost on their own, navigating to his messages. They synced through some work app. She'd noticed once, months ago, when a text from Mom had popped up on the screen. She'd assumed it was actually his mom. She checked now. The message thread labeled Mom was not from Tyler's mother. "Last night was perfect. I missed you." "Me too. I'll tell her I had a work emergency." She still doesn't suspect anything? Jules is clueless. Always has been. That one stopped her. Jules is clueless. Always has been. Tyler's words about her, typed to the woman whose crisis had stolen her birthday. Juliana kept scrolling, her stomach turning. The messages went back months, years. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was a pattern throughout their entire marriage. Anniversary dinners she thought Tyler planned for her. He'd been texting Megan that same day, making plans to see her later. Business trips she'd trusted him to take alone. There were photos attached. Hotel rooms. Megan's face smiling at the camera with Tyler's arm around her. Her birthday wasn't even the first time he'd spent the night there. According to these messages, it was at least the 5th. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Jules thinks I'm at Brandon's watching the game." You really think she buys all this? She wants to believe me. That's the thing about her. Makes it easy. She found references to their wedding day. She looked happy at the reception. Felt a little bad, honestly. You always feel bad at first. Then you get over it. Tyler had been texting Megan during their wedding reception. The call she'd interrupted in the parking lot, that wasn't work. It was his affair, continuing seamlessly from before they married through every day after. Juliana sat back, hands shaking. All those years. All those times she'd defended him. All those moments she'd told herself she was lucky. It had all been a performance. She was the audience. She heard Tyler's footsteps approaching. Quickly, she closed the laptop and grabbed her suitcase. "You're really doing this?" He sounded annoyed. "Walking out without giving me a chance to explain?" Juliana looked at him one last time. "There's nothing left to explain." She walked out without looking back. Juliana checked into a hotel that night. For the first time in years, she didn't have to wonder where Tyler was or what lie he'd tell when he got home. Her phone buzzed constantly. Tyler's texts cycled through anger, bargaining, fake remorse, then back to anger. She knew the pattern by heart. The next morning, she drove to her mom's house and told her everything. The birthday, the messages, the years of lies. Her mom listened without interrupting. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "I could see it every time you came home. But I didn't want to push." "I wasn't ready to admit it to myself," Juliana said. "I thought if I just tried harder, he'd finally choose me." Her mom took her hands. "You were always enough. He was just too broken to see it." On the 3rd day, Tyler showed up. Juliana stepped outside before he could ring the bell. He was holding roses, her favorite, with an expression of rehearsed remorse. "Jules, please, can we talk?" "About what?" "About us," about fixing this. That's what marriage is, right? Working through the hard stuff. For a moment, Juliana felt the old pull, the part of her that still remembered the good times. It would be easy to take the flowers, to convince herself this time would be different. But she remembered. Jules is clueless, always has been. "You've been sleeping with Megan for our entire marriage," she said flatly. "There's no fixing that." Tyler's expression flickered. She could see him calculating how to spin this. "That's not true. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong." "I read the messages, Tyler. All of them." Another flicker. "Okay, fine." He dropped the flowers. "I made mistakes, but you can't tell me our whole marriage was a lie." "Was it real when you were texting her during our wedding reception?" He didn't have an answer. "Juliana, please." His voice softened into the pleading tone that had worked so many times. Megan was just a weakness, an old habit. It didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, why did you lie for 3 years? "Because I knew you'd react like this. I knew you'd blow it out of proportion instead of understanding that people are complicated." There it was. Even now, caught red-handed, he was making it her fault. She was overreacting. He wasn't a liar, he was just complicated, and she was too simple to appreciate the nuance. "I want a divorce," she said. Tyler's face went pale. "You're not serious." "I've never been more serious." She turned and walked back inside, closing the door before he could follow. Through the window, she watched him stand frozen before finally driving away. Her mom appeared at her shoulder. "You okay, honey?" "I will be." Over the next week, Juliana started untangling her life from Tyler's. She contacted a divorce attorney named Bethany, a sharp woman who came highly recommended. In Bethany's office, Juliana laid out everything: the affair, the messages, the years of deception. Bethany listened calmly. "Do you still have access to those messages?" Juliana nodded. Before leaving, she'd screenshot everything. "Good. In Texas, infidelity can factor into asset division." Bethany flipped through notes. "You're both on the mortgage?" "Yes. We bought it 2 years ago." "And your income compared to his?" Juliana thought about it. She'd been promoted twice at her healthcare consulting firm. Tyler worked in sales. Good money, but inconsistent. She'd always been the stable earner. "I make about 30% more." "That's important. His infidelity could work in your favor." She paused. "Did you have access to credit card statements for his business trips?" "They went to his email. I never examined them closely." "I'd like to do some digging. Sometimes marital funds finance the affair. Hotels, dinners, gifts. That's money that should have stayed in the marriage." That night, Juliana logged into their joint bank account. They'd kept most finances separate, but there was one shared account for household expenses. She'd stopped monitoring it closely, trusting Tyler. The transaction history told a story she hadn't been paying attention to. Regular withdrawals that didn't match any bills. Transfers to an external account she'd never seen. Restaurant charges in parts of the city she'd never visited with him. A jewelry store purchase from 6 months ago, a necklace, nearly $800. Juliana didn't own any $800 necklace. More dinners, more transfers. A weekend trip to Austin he'd called a sales conference, but the hotel was a resort with no company reimbursement. He'd been funding his affair with their money she'd earned. Her phone buzzed. Tyler again. "Jules, please. I know I messed up, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything. Please don't throw away everything we built." Everything we built. As if he'd built anything. As if he'd been a partner instead of a parasite, draining resources to feed his other life. She put the phone down and started compiling records. Every suspicious transaction. Every transfer to the mystery account. She organized them chronologically, cross-referencing dates with his messages. By the time she finished, she had 30 pages of documentation, credit card statements, screenshots, calendar entries, a paper trail proving not just the affair, but systematic theft of marital funds. She sent everything to Bethany. "Let me know what else you need." Then she sat on her mom's back porch, watching the sunset. The anger had transformed into something useful, something with purpose. Tyler thought he'd gotten away with everything because she'd never looked closely enough. Now she was looking. And what she saw was going to cost him everything. The divorce papers arrived at Tyler's apartment 3 weeks later. Juliana knew the exact moment he received them because her phone exploded. "You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this." "I never thought you'd be this vindictive." Then, 20 minutes later, "Can we please just talk?" Juliana didn't respond. Silence was the only language Tyler couldn't manipulate. What she hadn't expected was the counterattack. It started with calls to her family. Her mom mentioned Tyler had shown up crying, begging for help, talking sense into Juliana. Her brother Caleb got a long text painting Juliana as emotionally unstable. Then Tyler contacted her workplace. Her boss, Patricia, called her into her office. "I got an interesting call this morning. Your soon-to-be ex wanted to warn us you've been under stress and your work decisions might be affected by personal problems." Juliana felt her face go hot. "He called you here?" "He thought he was being helpful." Patricia's expression was unreadable. "Want to tell me what's going on?" For a moment, Juliana felt the urge to minimize everything, to protect Tyler's image even now. But she was done protecting him. "My husband cheated on me throughout our entire marriage. I'm divorcing him. He's not taking it well." Patricia's expression softened. "I'm sorry. And for what it's worth, no phone call from a vindictive spouse will affect how I view your work." Juliana called Bethany that afternoon. "He's contacting my family and workplace. Is there anything I can do?" "Document everything. If this continues, we can add harassment to the proceedings. It won't look good for him." It was during this conversation that Bethany mentioned something that changed everything. "I finished reviewing the property records. Something interesting came up." "What?" "The down payment came entirely from your personal savings, correct?" "Yes. Tyler didn't have much saved, so I covered it. He agreed to pay a larger mortgage share to make up for it." "That agreement? Is it in writing?" Juliana paused. "We talked about it, but never put it on paper. Because he hasn't been paying the larger share. For 2 years, you've both paid exactly 50%. He never increased his contribution." Juliana felt disbelief. "I never noticed." "Easy mistake when you trust someone. But here's the thing. You contributed the entire down payment and half the mortgage. Your equity is significantly larger than his. Combined with evidence of him spending marital funds on the affair, we have a strong argument you should keep the apartment and seek reimbursement for diverted funds." For the first time since this began, Juliana felt hope. Tyler had spent years exploiting her trust. He'd stolen her time, peace, and money. But he'd also left a trail. That night, she wrote out everything she wanted from the divorce. The apartment, reimbursement, a clean break. Tyler had treated her trust as a weakness. Now she was done. The first decisive move came 2 weeks later. Bethany had subpoenaed Tyler's financial records, revealing even more damning evidence. The external account Juliana had found transfers to? It was a joint account with Megan. Tyler had been funneling money there for over a year, money that should have been paying their mortgage, their bills, their future. Armed with this evidence, Bethany filed a motion for unequal asset division. Texas law allowed deviation from the 50-50 split in cases of fault, and Tyler's behavior qualified in every way. The motion argued Juliana should retain sole ownership of the apartment and receive reimbursement for misappropriated funds. But the legal proceedings were just the beginning. Tyler had spent their marriage carefully managing his image. To his family, he was the devoted husband who treated his wife like a queen. To mutual friends, he was the fun guy who always picked up the check. Nobody knew about Megan except the people Tyler chose to tell. Juliana changed that. She didn't do it maliciously. She simply stopped pretending. When Tyler's mother called asking why they were divorcing, Juliana told her the truth. When mutual friends reached out, she explained what really happened. When Tyler's sister texted accusing her of abandoning the marriage, Juliana sent her one screenshot. She looked happy at the reception, felt a little bad, honestly. The sister didn't respond. But 2 days later, Tyler sent an enraged voicemail. "You're telling my family about private things. You're trying to turn everyone against me. This is harassment." Juliana almost laughed. He'd spent 3 years lying to her face, funding an affair with her money, and now he was accusing her of harassment for simply telling the truth. She forwarded the voicemail to Bethany, adding it to the growing file. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Tyler's carefully constructed world was starting to crumble. His mother had called him, furious about the wedding reception texts. His friends were quietly distancing themselves. Megan, apparently realizing the situation was no longer secret, had stopped responding to his messages. For the first time in their relationship, Tyler was facing consequences, and Juliana discovered that watching his facade crack was more satisfying than she'd ever imagined. This was just the beginning. The final blow came at the divorce hearing. Tyler had hired his own attorney, a man who tried to paint Juliana as emotionally unstable and vindictive. But Bethany was prepared. She presented the financial records first. The joint account with Megan, the transfers, the jewelry purchase, the hotel rooms, every dollar Tyler had diverted from their marriage, laid out in meticulous detail. Tyler's attorney objected repeatedly, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then Bethany presented the messages. Not all of them, just the most damaging ones. The ones where Tyler called Juliana clueless. The ones from their wedding day. The ones showing the affair had never stopped, not even for a moment. Tyler sat at his table looking smaller than Juliana had ever seen him. The confident man who'd walked through their apartment door expecting forgiveness was gone. In his place was someone who'd finally been caught. The judge reviewed everything with a neutral expression, asking occasional clarifying questions. When she finished, she looked directly at Tyler. "Mr. Harrison, is there anything you'd like to say in your defense?" Tyler glanced at his attorney, who gave a small shake of his head. There was nothing to say. The evidence spoke for itself. The judge ruled in Juliana's favor on nearly every point. She would keep the apartment. Tyler would reimburse her for the documented misappropriated funds, over $12,000. He would receive nothing from her retirement accounts, which he'd originally tried to claim a share of. As they left the courtroom, Tyler caught up to Juliana in the hallway. "I hope you're happy," he said bitterly. "You've ruined my life." Juliana stopped and turned to face him. For 3 years, his voice had made her anxious, desperate to smooth things over and keep the peace. Now it just sounded tired and pathetic. "You ruined your own life, Tyler. I just stopped covering for you." She walked away, feeling his stare on her back. Behind her, she heard his attorney murmuring something about appeals, about options, about next steps. But she knew none of it would matter. The truth was out. The people he'd fooled for years now knew exactly who he was. And Juliana? She was finally free. She pushed through the courthouse doors and stepped into the sunlight. 6 months later, Juliana stood in her apartment now, legally and fully, and looked around at how much had changed. She'd repainted the bedroom a soft sage green, a color Tyler had always vetoed. She'd rearranged the furniture, hung new art, filled the space with things that brought her joy instead of compromise. The apartment that had once felt like a prison now felt like home. The divorce had been finalized 2 months ago. Tyler had paid the court-ordered reimbursement, though his attorney had complained about it every step of the way. Last she heard, Megan had ended things with him shortly after the hearing. Apparently, the romance lost its appeal once it was no longer a secret. Tyler had moved to a smaller apartment across town. His family still spoke to him, but things were different now. The golden boy image had cracked, and everyone could see what was underneath. Juliana didn't feel satisfaction about his struggles, exactly. She just felt nothing. He was a stranger who had once shared her life, and now he didn't. What surprised her most was how much energy she had now that she wasn't constantly managing his moods, his lies, his version of reality. She'd started therapy to process everything she'd been through. She'd reconnected with friends she'd let drift away during the marriage. She'd even started painting again, a hobby she'd abandoned years ago because Tyler thought it was a waste of time. Her mom had noticed the change immediately. "There you are," she'd said during